Is Charlie Austin in, Austin out, in, out, in, out with Whelan sniffing about? The Austin Okie Kokie had you feeling down, but now the news is out. Oh, Charlie Austin. Oh, Charlie Austin. Oh, Charlie Austin. Fifth in the league. What we moaning about? Well, welcome to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Another tempestuous, gloriously bonkers week amongst the Swindon Town supporter base, with the chasm between those believing Town are the haves and those certain we are the have-nots edging even further apart. Sides, if you pay attention to social media, were most certainly getting picked. And then enter Sky Sports this evening. The Charlie Austin transfer saga has taken a series of violent twists over the last 72 hours, with Charlie popping up in the Arkles pre-kickoff versus Walsall before disappearing at half-time. No comments made or commitments given, at least for 24 hours, when Charlie maybe hinted at a bout of athlete's foot. And then, approximately 7 p.m. tonight, practically every Swindon Town fan's prayers were answered. Our boy is home. Sadly, it'll inevitably come at a cost, as poor Charlie hands back his staff pass, granting him seamless VIP entry to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. But hey, Lord Charles of Hungerford doesn't really need a pass, right? Listen, welcome home, Charlie. Unfinished business indeed. Well, dear listeners, we humbly request your calls, tweets, and DMs to lubricate the works of another packed show. Tell us what Charlie returning means to you. Describe your emotions. Share your memories. Divulge your opinions, both positive and, if you're game enough, negative. Those contributions, the best of them, will win a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge goodie bag, including 4 hot-off-the-press prints from Dan Design's new Charlie Austin range. Well, obviously, if we find time, we've also got Northampton away tomorrow night to preview, and the Bones of Walsall to tackle also. But let's just crack on, shall we? Joining me tonight are Ellis. Ellis, good evening.
Good evening. Can I just say what a song that was?
Thank you. You're very kind. You can blame Mrs. Hanrahan for that. It was her inspiration.
Beautiful song and
Jason,
beautiful vocals.
Thank you, mate. You're very kind. Jason, good evening to you, pal.
Good evening indeed. Ditto to that. Yeah, lovely vocals.
Jason, you're becoming quite the lucky mascot for us. So you're very welcome. Once
I
again.
wasn't that lucky on Boxing Day, was I?
Well, don't worry about that. Our boy's home. It doesn't matter. Now, from one man that likes to sing to another, Gabs, good evening.
Good evening. Michael Van Gerwen's very good at darts, isn't he?
No, literally no idea. Couldn't care less, Gabs. I've got to be honest.
I thought you bold geniuses have to stick together.
Oh, listen, there's no need to call me Van Gerwen. I will take it though. If Van Gerwen grows himself a little beardy, I might take it. Who else we got tonight? We got the wonderful Martin. How are you, Martin?
I'm not too bad, thanks. Hannah, how about yourself?
You can probably guess. I'm sat here mildly aroused.
Only mildly. That's not like you.
Well, no. And to one person that will almost, from one person that's mildly aroused to one that I know is positively erupting. Chris, how are you, pal?
I'm good. But hey, John, I can see you're listening. Come to Northampton tomorrow, mate. We'll have a good day.
Has anyone checked on Joe also?
No, I think Joe's just curled up in a corner. Just he's a quivering.
There's going to be one hell of a mess to keep.
Joe's drunk. Joe's always drunk.
Right, listen, everyone, panel listeners. I wanted to kick off with a brilliant tweet from a listener, Andy Footner. Andy, good evening to you, because Andy, I think you absolutely nail what tonight's all about. Okay, so Andy says, I'll be 59 in January, and I can't think of a town signing that has got me so excited for a long time. Just hope his shoulder is 100%. We don't heap too much pressure on those fragile shoulders. Andy, I think you pretty much speak for all of us when we say that. And I would say it's fair to say that Town will have put him through a rigorous set of medical tests before they would have got him to sign on the dotted line. So on the latter, Andy, park your concerns and let's just go with the front part of your tweet, which was, guys, I'll just put it back to you as a panel. I mean, I said to you a few weeks back when, you know, may have got a mild nod that this could possibly be, if it was to come off, the biggest Swindon Town signing in my history of following the club. Now, when you consider that takes into account the likes of Jan Ogafjortov, you know, big money signings, like him or not, Joey Beecham was a lot of money. You know, we dropped some big coin back in the day. And I've got to tell you, not a single signing, bar possibly the appointment of Glenn Hoddle as player manager, has got me as brimming as this. So, I mean, literally, what does it mean to you? I'm going to pick someone because I know you'll all just want to jump in. So what I want to do is I want to pick one of the younger stages, given I'm an old fart. And so, Ellis, the stage is yours.
Right, where to start? I think he comes in at such a important time in the season as well. I think when you ask most Swindon Town fans at the minute, the county ground feels very stale, and I think Charlie Austin coming into the squad brings a bit of excitement to the team. I think we've been missing that since sort of the likes of Harry McCurdy went, and I think most importantly, Charlie Austin brings goals and experience. So sort of forgetting the past, and sort of even if you dismiss the fact that he used to be a Swindon Town player, or Swindon Town legend, like just that Charlie Austin in himself is a fantastic signing. I mean, I heard rumours he was getting offers from Championship clubs, and I know it was sort of on the table of him going to Bristol Rovers in League One. So for him to drop down to this level to League Two, I think is massive. And yeah, that first game, when he's back playing at the county ground, is going to be something special.
Yeah. Indeed, Ellis. Indeed. I'm almost. I've got so much to say. I'm literally just going to move along to. We're going to zigzag over to an old fart, much like me, and I'm going to take your views, Chris. What does it mean to you, pal?
I knew exactly when you said old fart that you were coming to me then.
So come on, mate. Charlie Austin back at the club. What does it mean?
Oh, it's outstanding there, but I think what we need to do is we need to use Charlie, and we need to obviously we know what he brings on the pitch, but you look at a guy like Jake Wakeland. What can Charlie Austin do for him? He can near enough make his career, because how much can Jake Wakeland learn off him about the movement? And look, Charlie's not the quickest, but how many strikers have that movement that he does? And if just like Jake's watching him in training and watching him there and whatnot, and he can learn so much from him. And I think the more so than actually having Charlie there as a player straight up is what our players can learn from him, and not even the strikers. Everyone can just learn about a guy who's played at the higher level and what it takes to get there. But I think one of the biggest things that I noticed from watching the game back on Saturday, there was no movement. What Charlie brings to the game is elite level movement.
I'll tell you what's really interesting, Chris. You talk about movement there. I mean, you're talking about a player that's got into England squads in Charlie Austin, right? So under Hodgson, Charlie Austin was part of a squad, didn't quite make the final cut, but he was right up there, right? So he's at that kind of level now. A striker that was famed for having zero pace, but it was all about movement and instinct, was, of course, Teddy Sheringham. And you've only got to look at the age Teddy was when he pretty much called time on his career in the Premier League. I mean, I think he was pushing 40. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, really interesting point, because I've kept a close eye over the last sort of 3-4 weeks of a lot of the kind of negative takes, and I really hope we can get into a few tonight just to provide a bit of balanced debate. But one of the big concerns has been Charlie's age, and and the fact that people. I mean, and Andy's tweet that I read out right at the start sort of tipped a nod to it. That there's a is there still this perceived issue with a shoulder, and does he have medical issues that are going to hold him back, and so on and such like. Well, I mean, listen. We've I think our medical department has proven to us over the last couple of seasons that we shouldn't have too much to be concerned about in terms of them managing guys that have got knocks and have got have got a bit of wear and tear on their bodies. But crucially for me, Charlie's game has never ever been about pace. He's got the most unbelievable what's the word for it? Just sense of where to be at the right time. He gets in the right places at the right time. And that's perfect. Thank you for that, Gabs. Yeah, he's just got that now. So he's got that striker's instinct. So that's something you're never going to take away. Now, so here's the thing, Chris. People can bang on all they like about, he's not going to be quick enough, this, that, and the other. But like I said, was Teddy Sheringham ever quick enough? And let's also talk about the fact that we're talking about movement in the upper echelons of the football pyramid. Charlie's going to be deploying that movement in League Two. Now, I'm sorry, if that doesn't get your lips smacking, then I don't know what will.
One thing I'll say about that, though, Mark, there was Duncan Shearer quick?
Yeah, exactly that, pal. Exactly that. He really wasn't. Was Steve White quick? You could argue Steve White was lightning over a couple of yards, but Steve White's game wasn't about. I mean, again, another player is all about the movement, and I know the game's changed since the days of Shearer and White. Of course, it has. But there are still cracking strikers out there making a superb living off the back of their movement. So, listen, for me, it's not an issue, Chris. I think.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say to you, Mark, though. Now, let's talk about the best strikers we've had. How many of them have been quick?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, the thing is, great. Obviously, pace in football. I mean, pace in football is a hugely valued commodity. And you've only got to look at the impact of Tyree Simpson last season, where it was pace, it was power, and what that brought, collectively. I mean, someone made a point today on Twitter, and I'm so sorry, I've forgotten who it was that put it out there. But, the fact that losing Tyree Simpson in the manner that we did, I think it was you, Matt B, wasn't it? In fact, yeah, it was. Matt, I think it was Matt that made the point that losing Tyree Simpson last season, in the minds of him, and certainly in my mind as well, was possibly one of the biggest contributors to us not getting automatic promotion. And yeah, I mean, so I know that he's valued, but I mean, like I said, we're talking about a goal scoring phenomenon here. That's not overselling it. If you were to ask, I mean, any regular listeners to the show will know that Vic Morgan has been on 3-4 occasions and spoken about what it is that he's seen from Charlie over the years. What he's seen from Charlie and compared to the great Swindon strikers over the years. And again, it just goes back to what I was saying about that movement, that instinct, the ability to hit the back of the net. There is, even Charlie, we got him to come on and talk about it. I think it was his very first outing on the show, and he said that it's like something that can't be taught. Like it's not necessarily something that he's had to really, really work on in training. It's just something that he's just got, and he struggled to explain how he's got it. Obviously, he's built on that as well. He's built on that with training, of course he has. But he's got that. He's got that Colonel's secret recipe. So super exciting. But look, let's move ourselves nicely along. And Jason, obviously relatively new to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, but certainly not new in the wonderful world of supporting Swindon Town. What does Charlie signing mean to you, Jason?
I'm not going to lie. I am giddy about it because it's Charlie Austin. Like, he's a hero. He's an idol. Like, of all Swindon Town fans of a certain generation. I've been up and down all day about this, up and down. And like one moment I'm really excited, the next moment I'm just terribly worried that we're going to ruin, this guy's kind of like moment and our memories of him, because he's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic player, but we're not playing very well at the moment. And I worry. I really worry. He's on a 6-month contract. I don't want it to be 6 months. I want it to be a year. I want it to be 2. You know. So that might sound like I'm bringing it all down, but that's how I feel. I feel like we've got an amazing player, an amazing opportunity, and we need to make the most of it. And I'm just
No,
not quite sure how.
Jason, listen, I think that's a very, very, very valid point. You know, look, you've got a guy in Charlie Austin, okay, whose record at Swindon reads 65 appearances, 37 goals. You know, one of the most iconic strike partnerships in recent history with Billy Painter. You know, yeah, of course, we can talk about Wembley 2010 and, you know, ultimately that season coming to an unsatisfactory end for us all. Of course we can. We can talk about tears on the pitch, this, that, and the other. But we are talking about one of Swindon's very, very kind of rare but very real Roy of the Rovers stories, which is why I think we're so excited about it. And it's for somebody that has played relatively few games. I mean, like I said, we're talking about a club legend here. And how many people would be given legend status with 65 games under their belt? So there is that aura about Charlie. What he did when he was at the club was super special. The fact that he had that everyman quality, the fact that he kind of pretty much graduated from park football straight into the Swindon Town first team. You know, he openly admitted that his training sessions, he was puking everywhere because he was just, the levels of fitness when he first got there were just a million miles away, but just could not stop scoring once he got in. And we're talking about 2-3-0 wins against Leeds, the Southampton goal. I mean, you know, the Charlton playoff games, incredible moments. So I think it's only right, Jason, that, you know, you do sort of signal that note of caution because, like, it's kind of rare these days that players come back to Swindon. Yeah, of course, there are examples like multiple loan spells for Ben Gladwin, multiple loan spells for Nicky Ajose, both of whom came back, varying degrees of success. I mean, I go all the way back to, you know, the likes of Paul Bodin. Obviously, Paul sold to Crystal Palace, came back for a sliver of that fee, just went on to score silly goals from left back, silly amounts of goals, including the goal that put us up into the Premier League. So there is always an element of risk when the stakes are that high. And I think legacy is such a special thing. I think it's only right and proper that you raise it, Jason. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Can I just say one thing? I like being an older member of the crew, even though I may not look it. I do remember a Dave Bamber coming back to the club.
Yeah.
I think he actually had a better time the second time round than the first. So, you know, there is hope.
Yeah, for sure there is. I mean, look, Gabs, you're kind of like in the I would almost call you a bit of a middle statesman. You're certainly not. You're not as young as Ellis, but you're not an old git like me. What does it mean to you, Gabs, as somebody that also unashamedly references, a certain allegiance to a West London Premier League club as well? What does Charlie's signing mean to you?
I'm trying not to get carried away because, quite frankly, yeah, he's done everything he's done in the past, etc. But I'm trying to look at it at face value in terms of we actually need a striker. At the moment, I feel like we actually need a striker, and the fact he knows the club, the fact he's proven, the fact he's actually going to lead the dressing room as well, it's just ticking a lot of boxes, isn't it? Really. I'm just trying to look in the present because, to be honest, Boxing Day was so bad that one, something needs to happen for people to keep coming. Two, something needs to just change in general for performances to pick up.
And I mean, obviously, you'll remember, Gabs. It doesn't always go brilliantly for players that drop right down the leagues and deploy themselves in the bottom tier. You'll remember Sol Campbell turning out for Notts County, and that didn't go very well for him, did it? So there is an acclimatisation that he's going to have to undertake as well, Gabs, isn't there? Because I'm sure there's going to be many a League Two centre half that's going to want to give him a very rude awakening, a very, very harsh welcome back to League Two football.
Yeah, definitely. The only one I can think of that can actually manage and kind of is very good with players that have played in the Premier League in their 30s are Wickham. Like, Wickham seem to be the masters of it. And I guess Forest Green have Connor Wickham now, don't they? So, I mean, it does happen. It has happened in the past. But, to be honest, has he ever played in League Two before? He hasn't, has he? He's always in League One, hasn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see one.
But the one of the biggest thing here though is that we're trying to probably paper over is we create about one chance a game, and that's our biggest issue. It doesn't matter if we've got Charlie Austin up front if we're not creating anything, and that's where that's where our biggest issue is.
However, what I think Austin will add though is he won't be afraid to put himself about. Every time Wakeland went near that centre back on Saturday, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with him because he was massive, he was strong. Austin's not going to shy away from that.
Yeah, but with Wakeland, Wakeland should never be up front on his own. If Wakeland's up front with someone else, then he's a different player. But he should never, ever be up front on his own.
Couldn't agree more. Especially like in League Two, you're playing big lumps every week. Last season we had Davidson, we had Simpson. I like Jeffka, I like Wakeland, but this is where I'm kind of disappointed in Adeloy because I thought Adeloy would be that big lump that the other two will play off. Hasn't really happened for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, we'll come on to the kind of the tactical benefits of having Charlie Austin in the piece. I'm sure, but all I will say is that straight off the bat, the thing that gets me really excited is that the fact that it is Charlie Austin out there on that pitch he's the kind of player you cannot leave alone. And even if Charlie ends up sort of, not necessarily smashing him in at the rate that we're all sort of hoping and praying that he will. Just imagine, Chris talked about what it does for Jake Wakeland, but the space that A, his presence and B, his movement is going to create for the other forward players in our lineup. And also just the way that he's going to be talking to his teammates, demanding the ball. He's going to be asking a lot of those lads on the training ground and on the pitch. I think it's a phenomenally exciting signing. And I'll tell you what, someone else that agrees as well is FIFA FC. Hello, FIFA FC, who's tweeted to say, so happy for Charlie to be back, especially how he loves the club and the fans love him. That makes the transfer so much better. And him being back, and hopefully he'll make his second debut at home, which makes it even more special. Look, it's a really interesting point, isn't it? And Martin, I'll bring you in at this stage. You're a bit of an old romantic with a football, much like me. FIFA FC makes a very, very interesting point there, doesn't it, about second home debuts, hopefully being at home. The whole romantic element of this signing can't be understated, Martin, can it?
No, it's massive. Like I know you said earlier about one of the biggest signings, and Hodel Fjordhoff was a little bit before I was old enough to really know football. So for me, this is probably the biggest one, and I couldn't be happier. I do have to say though, you mentioned romantic, and it is, and the build-up has been incredible. The thought of Charlie coming home, so it's only fair that we address the fact that we need to say fuck you, Sky Sports, because for them to do that, we are a fan base in desperate need of some positivity. Charlie will hopefully bring back seats. Like you said, his second debut should be at home. It'd be amazing to have loads of people back in the county ground for it. But for them to take away the chance to give us as a fan base that massive elation, that despite all the rumours, everyone kind of knew it was going to happen at some point, that Sky Sports took that away from us as a fan base, that much needed massive boost of positivity. So whoever was the reason behind that being leaked, I hope they had the most average Christmas. Fuming. That really put a down on it.
On that. Are they still running? Are they still looping it, or has it been cut? Does it only show the once and now it's cut?
I don't know, but I think it would be only right and proper that we would say allegedly leaked at this stage. And
true. Don't sue me. Allegedly,
and it would be for that's a conversation for other bodies to be talking about. But the conversation with obviously ultimately, fundamentally, the news is out there. It's very, very exciting news. And that's all really we're going to be getting into tonight. I'm certainly not going to be going toe to toe with how that's ended up going out and about. The fact is, it's out there. It's a matter of public record now. Charlie Woods Martin has just said to say thank you, Charlie. I hope the wonderful. So he was asking about my wonderful entry, Charlie. I hope the wonderful entry was wonderful enough for you. And apologies for anyone else that might have offended. Glenn Richards Martin has said, "Nice one, Charlie. Nice one, son. Nice one, Charlie. Let's have another one."
I haven't heard that in a long time.
No, that's gonna. I'm looking forward to hearing that getting belted out down end. Okay. Dean McMacken, Martin, while you're on, has said, "Oh shock! Look, Martin talking about being aroused."
Well, I don't know what to say to that on a live Ed show. Thanks, Dean. Thanks for putting me in that
Yeah.
situation.
On
I'll
another
speak to you
note,
privately.
gents. On another note, so I've just decided to look at the top scorers in League Two, just to kind of see in there who's actually got pace and who hasn't. So at the top, we've got Sam Hoskins and Andy Cook.
Neither
Cook's
of them are
6'7",
quick.
only. He's not. Yeah, I'll say they're not quick. Johnson for Warsaw. Was he on the pitch Saturday? I don't remember him playing Saturday, but yeah, Johnson, Dennis, Gordon for Barrow. There's not pace there really at all.
Yeah. That's an excellent observation, Gabs, and it's absolutely bang on the money. I mean, that's my point. You know, look, at the end of the day, I mean, okay, go back to what I was saying before. The two names you mentioned there, Hoskins and Cook, you know, scoring goals for fun, really, really good players at this level, but they've got movement nowhere near the movement that Charlie's going to offer you in this league. It's and I mean, God Almighty, like you said, I mean. I am trying to temper my enthusiasm, because, you know, appreciate there are acclimatization issues. Charlie's been out in the A League for 6 months, but, you know, let's be honest. You know, the A League. Charlie's been talking about it on the show. You know, the levels of physicality in the A League. You know, they're half decent. You know, you've had decent players go out there in their early 30s and say just how competitive they found it. Simon Cox has been on the show. Of course, he was playing for Western Sydney Wanderers, and Simon said the same thing when he went out there. You know, there are unique challenges out there as well, in terms of the kind of, you know, the temperatures that these guys are playing in. You know, it's a tough old league. So, there's gonna be some acclimatizing, but I just can't get away from the fact, Gabs. Just to add on to your point there, I just can't get away from the fact that we are signing a striker whose game has never been about, you know, long, streaky, pacey runs. Charlie just added on to his tweet here, by the way. Charlie Wood said, "What an evening it's been. The king is home. My first ever goat of my lifetime. Never been more excited for a transfer in the past 3 years. Get the promotion party ready." Well, Charlie's certainly buzzing. James Street. Hello, James. First tweet I believe I've ever read from James. James has said, "The wife has come home from a hard shift at the Great Western Hospital. God bless her, James." And she is buzzing with the news. What a signing, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And he's retweeted his wife Laurie's tweet, which said, "Had a pretty horrific day at work, but there's nothing like the return of my absolute hero to lift the spirits. I still can't actually believe it." What a lovely, I mean, that's a real perspective bringer. I don't know which of my wonderful panel want to pick up on that, but there we've got obviously an NHS worker in Laurie that's had the most horrific day at work, and anybody that works frontline public services, anyone that has worked in the NHS or any of the emergency services will testify. When someone that's working that environment says, "I've had a pretty horrific day at work," that really does mean a pretty horrific day at work. So for Laurie to be able to turn around and say that the return of Charlie Austin has lifted spirits to a point where it helps her get over the day, that pretty much sort of sums it up quite nicely. And I'll tell you what, I'd like to bring in Andrew Hawes, who's listening in. Andrew, good evening to you, pal. How are you? Oh,
I am here, hopefully.
Hello, Andrew. Yes, you certainly are. So my point, Andrew, just talking about Laurie there, who's obviously an NHS worker, and we're talking about the romance of this move and so on and so forth. But I mean, we really are talking about absolute kind of, what's the word for it? We're talking about a yeah. I mean, where do we go with it?
I don't want to start Martin off, but there's some romance there, isn't there? I think definitely. So, in him returning, you know, football seems so ruthless and so financial and so money driven that the prospect of someone coming back, because in part, at the very least, you know, obviously there's some stuff about it being convenient in terms of being home, but the fact they want to return to their club where it started for them, it's kind of refreshing, really. I mean, so how often over the past few years this is not sort of trying to dig out players individually. Do you hope Jack Payne stays for the most recent example, or you go back and off they go to wherever, and it's never inspiring, and it doesn't particularly seem like it always works out for them, and a bit like Harry McCurdy to Hibs, and yeah, just to have someone who's a kind of generationally popular player, as you said, on the brink of coming back it's rather nice. It does I think make you as a fan feel a bit special.
And you really can't understate that, Andrew, can you? I mean, I said the same on last week's show, that we were talking about the prospect of this potentially, being in the offing, and I just said that you can be romantic and gooey as you like, but there is no denying the fact that here we've got a guy. He's not come back for the money. And yes, of course, we all know that Charlie is local to the club, and he said that in his interview on Sky Sports today. He's local to the club. He's come back for family reasons. That all makes sense. Of course it does. But let's be totally frank about it. To travel just down the road to play football with his mate Joey Barton, he would have probably picked up a fair old whack more to be pulling on the blue and white of Bristol Rovers. You've got Reading just down the road. You've got Cardiff just down the road. You've got clubs like Wycombe Wanderers that have, as we mentioned earlier, have got a brilliant reputation for keeping players in their sort of early to mid-30s going and performance-wise super effective. So, for him to want to come back to Swindon Town, and I'll tell you a lovely story. So I met Charlie about a week after he signed for the club. And he was really bleary-eyed at the time. And he was just like, wow, listen, Mark, like all my dreams have come true. I was literally sort of, he wasn't being disparaging to Paul, but he was saying there are some games he's played for Paul where just before going on the pitch, he felt like he was getting changed behind a tree or having a quick wee behind a tree before he went onto the pitch. And then he rocked up. And the thing that really struck me about him was, I mentioned it earlier and described it as like an everyman quality. Well, back then he was literally like, I am like living the dream. Now, I was lucky enough to work in football for the best part of 20 odd years. And during the kind of, certainly the last sort of 10, 12 years, I've kept in touch with Charlie kind of sporadically, and our paths have crossed on a couple of occasions, and we've had conversations. And often he sort of said to me, do you know what, Mark, like you never know what would happen, but I would love to come back one day. Like I would love to come back. And he was saying that off the record to somebody that had once worked in the football space, but then was doing a very, very different type of job once that conversation took place. He had no reason to kind of say that to me. But it wasn't like I was going to kind of go out and suddenly influence an entire fan base or so on and such. Like it was long before we were even, before the Sir Tom Broadband Lounge even was born. So, he had that twinkle in his eye, and he was like, it was all about wanting the dream. That'd be a dream way to end my career. And it was that the almost like a little bit of a cliche, but I don't mean that in a negative way. Like it gets said a lot about players wanting to go back, finish their careers where it all started, but he wanted to come back while he still got, enough in the tank, where he still had something to offer. And I think that is like unbelievably exciting for us, Andrew. I mean, as you say, it's really quite a rarity, isn't it? But so obviously, Andrew, you've been covering Town. You've not missed the kick pretty much this season, apart from a little bit of illness, injury, illness enforced absence from the commentary box. What do you think are going to be Charlie's kind of biggest obstacles trying to fit into the current sort of setup from your perspective?
That's a good question, isn't it? You've got to try and judge what sort of player I guess he is now, rather than the sort of player he was then. I suppose the encouraging thing is, whatever state he's in physically, and it can't be that bad because he's been playing regularly for Brisbane, but it tends to be with the sort of really good players, the touch is the last thing to go. So I don't see why he should lose that sort of, but that kind of ability he's got in the box to get a shot away quickly. I guess there's going to be a bit of challenge in kind of integrating him, whether he'd be the one sort of central forward up front, and you push players out wide, and how can he adapt to that? But I suppose it is what everyone's talking about, despite all the frustration people have with the attacking play. The team are taking a lot of shots when you look at the stats. So they've just got to try and find him in some decent positions and let him work his magic, really. Which it feels like it's been difficult to do. But you hope that movement and that kind of cleverness he's got in the box will, even if it doesn't always give him a chance, it will create more space perhaps for Jeffcott or Wakeling or so on. So hopefully it's no more really than those players sort of understanding his moves and trying to profit from them, as well as, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan, often getting the goals that he ought to be capable of.
Well, look, Andrew, Steve Terrell's tweeted in. Steve says, sorry, but Hoddle, Fjortoft, Johnny Williams are bigger for me. Always good to get a contrary view, Steve. And you've mentioned some absolute heavyweights there. Certainly, Johnny Williams just returning from a World Cup in Qatar. I mentioned right at the start of the show, Jan Olga Fjortoft signed for £500,000 back when £500,000 at Swindon Town was enormous.
Sorry to interrupt. The man himself has just tweeted.
The man himself has tweeted. Go on. Please jump in with that, Gabs.
Love heart, clock, image, staying. They started missing you when they failed to replace you.
Wow. How about that? Well, look, Andrew, I was just going to follow on Steve's tweet by saying, I mean, Glenn Hoddle, arguably the greatest player of his generation. Jan Olga Fjortoft moved around for significant amounts of money, played at World Cups, responsible for the downfall of England at one point, a major spear in the heart of Graham Taylor's England. And as I say, Johnny Williams just back from Qatar. But we, Owen Doyle was a huge moment for us, Andrew, wasn't it? If we talk about our very, very recent history, Owen Doyle was a huge moment for Swindon Town. I immediately, when I sort of got whiff that this could be in the offing, immediately had those wonderful memories of the county ground packed against Exeter, the wind tunnel blowing. How big do you think Charlie Austin's return compares with that of the return of Owen Doyle?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? The Doyle finally coming back was very special because it was so in the balance, and we'd already seen what a sensational kind of half season he'd had already. So that was just a huge that was a kind of huge lift, wasn't it? And again, it was brilliant timing with a really big game and an extra being at the top at the same time. Going back to my older days slightly, I'm sure there was definite buzz around Fjortoft arriving, but there may be, I'm going to sound very old, believe it or not, once upon a time, back in the dim and distant past, you couldn't necessarily see like Rapid Vienna or that much European football non-stop. So I don't think we all actually knew that much about Fjortoft at the time, other than he was intriguing and he was exotic. Now, if Fjortoft had ever re-signed, not that we should have told him in the first place, so for the latter part of his career, then you would have had to drag me off any high ceiling or off the top of any tall building you could find. So hopefully that's a sort of good comparison. And I've rambled away completely off your question, haven't I?
No, Andrew, not at all. Because I was going to also ask you. We've mentioned before about returning heroes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But like me, you're old enough to remember the return of Paul Rideout. Obviously, Swindon had sold Paul Rideout to back in the day to Bari in Serie A, and Paul had done okay out in Italy. And then he had ended up returning to these shores with Southampton and sort of drifted out the first team picture. Now, obviously, as a Swindon hero back in the day, to find himself back in Ozzy Ardiles' side as we sort of, hunted around for a replacement for the eventually departing Duncan Shearer. Paul Rideout was a bit of a disappointment. So there are notes of caution, Andrew, aren't there, with returning heroes? And I know we sort of touched on this before, but it doesn't always it doesn't always kind of tend to work brilliantly. I mean, if we were to look at football on a broader scale, I mean, if you talk to Arsenal fans about when Thierry Henry came back, scored against Leeds, it was a lovely moment. But I think most Arsenal fans will tell you it was still, blindingly obvious that Henry wasn't the Henry of old. So. And it was a little bit like it was probably a good thing that it came to an end and it didn't drag.
Yeah. I know, hopefully he doesn't need to be the Austin that we remember of 10 years ago to be effective at this level, and he shouldn't do really. So when he's scoring, when he's like just making a mockery of top-end League One defences and clearly capable of playing higher. So it doesn't necessarily perhaps need him to be exactly the same player to still be effective and still have an important part to play. So yeah, and inevitably it's a bit hit and miss, but there's obviously sentiment for us in him coming back, but it just all really kind of depends on what stage the player's career at, and I think we can be reasonably optimistic that he has something to offer on the pitch and off the pitch as well. So I think you remember, speaking of people coming back, Phil King came back, David Kerslake came back, and it wasn't sort of particularly successful for either of them, unfortunately. And I think there were bits from Phil King, weren't there? So, but again, I think Phil always had a certain amount of trouble in kind of getting 100% fit at that point in his career as well, when he talked about it. So whereas Charlie's been playing pretty regularly, so I'm hopeful. I'm cautious, and I think people are allowed to be both excited and sensible at the same time. I think you can enjoy the emotion of it and have us as a fan base feeling special because this former player who was so good has come back to join us, and recognizing that you won't necessarily exactly get what you get 10 years ago. Though, as you said with Henry and Arsenal, hopefully those we can operate two different hemispheres of our brain at the same time, if you see what I mean.
I very much do. Well, look, Rachel Wilson's also tweeted us. Rachel, good evening to you. Rachel says, so much excitement and anticipation for the last few days. It's been great to see. Charlie will bring a massive injection of passion back, hopefully a lot of goals. And he's a big vocal leader. I can't wait. Look, Ellis, I'll bring you in on this because you're not too far from me in the town end from my perch. Excitement and anticipation she's leading in with there, Rachel. But she's also talking about a massive injection of passion. Now, it's fair to say, Ellis, you and I have been speaking the last couple of weeks about the kind of atmosphere in and around the county ground. Excitement, anticipation, and passion are not three words that we would be using to describe what's been going on inside SM12 ED. Is it fair to say? So Rachel makes a very interesting point, doesn't she?
Yeah, this season, I think most people can agree that we've sort of lacked a bit of passion, lacked a bit of excitement, and I think last season I really enjoyed coming to watch the games because we had sort of the likes of Harry McCurdy, Jack Payne, and sort of players that can bring a bit of excitement to the game. And this season, we're sort of in a similar position to what we were last season, but if you look at our performances, I wouldn't say it's been anywhere near as exciting as last season. So to have a player like Charlie Austin, like imagine the ball goes out for a corner and Charlie Austin, sort of pumps his fist up in the air to excite the town end. Like it's moments like that you I don't know what the word is, but
no, the ball creator, Ellis, isn't he?
Yeah. So to have a player that can sort of just bring a bit of excitement to the game and back to the county ground and give you something to like worth watching. You can't really put a price on that.
So it is an interesting one for you. So Mike Dixon's tweeted very much tongue in cheek here. Mike, good evening, Mike. Mike said it's great to sign an experienced goal scorer, but I've not heard anyone refer to it as a knock your socks off signing, like when we signed Lucas Maguire. It's a very, very interesting point, Jason, isn't it? I'll bring you in. It's because, Jason, you're not underwhelmed by the signing, are you? But do you still feel, even with the sort of potential negativity, do you still recognise Charlie Austin's signing as a knock your socks off striker? Oh, Jason, have we lost you?
No, I'm with you. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, he has the quality. He has the experience. It's the use of the player, isn't it? I mean, one of the things we haven't talked about is the impact on the squad, the impact on the players on the pitch. So having somebody like, ex Premier League player in his early 30s, that's going to have a massive impact. Players are going to play up to him, and they're going to want to be the man that creates the assist. They're going to want to be the man that puts the cross in where he gets his head on the end of it. So I think it's going to be massive. Yeah, I have my doubts. I have my doubts because by trade I'm an analyst, so I kind of look at these things and I kind of try to look at all the angles. And yeah, I worry, but at the same time, he's a incredible striker, and we just need to find a way to make it work.
Jason, to layer into what you're saying, Matt S has just tweeted in. Matt, hello, mate. Good evening to you. And Matt says, Charlie brings, I mean, it's what your point, really. Charlie brings the instinct of being in the right place at the right time to score goals. The other strikers in our squad can learn just by watching him. I mean, that's so true, isn't it? Again, we kind of touched on this earlier, but we didn't really deep dive into it, Jason. But the regular listeners to the show will remember Paul Caddis has been on a few times with us, and Paul talked about Charlie in training, and he talked about the fact that in many ways, sort of pros like Charlie, they're a bit of a throwback. I mean, I was once invited up to Beversbrook to watch the lads train, and it was when Charlie was absolutely slamming them home in the I'm sure it was the playoff season. But what really struck me was he would celebrate every goal in training like he'd scored out on the county ground pitch, like a competitive goal. And that level of infectious enthusiasm was just absolutely, and if you watch the way he celebrates all his goals for all the other clubs he's played for in his career, he's kind of got that. And it's up there with, it's that Ian Wright, and in many ways Ian Wright and Charlie Austin's career paths, if you compare the two, there are some similarities there, and I do believe a lot of that is because of where they come from. Charlie was carrying bricks around for his dad's building company. Ian Wright was plastering walls, before they both got their chances. So they both got that perspective, and you feel that they just want to milk every single second while they're out on the pitch, and that's a real driver. But I cannot kind of overlook that if you're Jake Wakelin, and I mean, at the moment for me, Jake cut a bit of a forlorn figure on Saturday, where I could just imagine Charlie putting an arm around his shoulder, a couple of little words in his ears. I mean, we had a wonderful moment earlier in the season when Jake and Charlie were introduced themselves to each other on our show. And there was a lovely exchange between the two of them. And Charlie said a couple of little words to him that night. And, you could go back and listen to the shows. I believe the show's still on our YouTube channel. But those little moments are going to be like absolutely priceless. So you're not going to be able to put a price on that. Steve Terrell, you absolute rascal. Steve's going in on Charlie again here. Steve saying, Jerry Yates, I'd probably have been more excited. Look, Steve, I guess, even without tongue-in-cheek there, I mean, I think we'd all be super excited if we got Jerry Yates back at the county ground. And I still believe that Jerry Yates has got unfinished business. And I'm sure we will see Jerry Yates at some point in his career come back to the county ground. I think most of us would believe if we got Jerry Yates back in the current Swindon Town squad in League Two, I think we'd all have cause to get super excited. Taze 85, Taze, hello to you, pal. Tay says, I've seen milk turn quicker than those Walsall centre-backs. Charlie will have a field day. And again, I mean, Gabs, it's been a while since we heard your lovely tones. It's a really good point, isn't it? And again, we sort of touched on it a bit earlier. Movement of defenders in this league. They're not going to be used to playing against the likes of Charlie Austin, are they? That cute movement combined with Charlie's awareness of the dark arts, etc., he's going to be a handful for League Two centre-backs, isn't he, surely?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Owen Doyle at that level, and, teams didn't really have a clue what was going on. So I think he could definitely cause a few issues when they think he's gone in behind, he's got another tap in.
So, okay. Well, look, we'll take another couple of tweets in here. Nigel Anger. Hello, Nigel. Good evening to you. Nigel said, hopefully he will help us attract other good players to the club. At least it shows a bit of ambition at last. I mean, that's another really, really interesting point. Chris, not heard from you for a while, so I'll take your point. I'll take your view on this. Nigel raises a very, very interesting point, Chris, doesn't he, about it's a statement signing in terms of attracting other players to the club. Because let's, for example, say we hadn't signed a Jacob Wakelin, and Jakey was like umming and ahhing about which club he might pick at our level, or indeed the league above. The opportunity to come and play alongside Charlie Austin and learn from Charlie Austin is huge, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. But you look at the strikers we've got. One of the big problems that all of us who watch this, we have no movement. You could look at the games we have. We're very static. The only guy in our team who shows any movement is Johnny Williams. The rest of them are very static, and that's the big difference that Charlie's going to bring. And you just think, look, how much is Wakeland going to bring, and how much will even Alloy in training learn from what Charlie's doing?
I'll tell you what is really interesting. Talk about learning from people doing stuff. Billy Painter's been a little bit mischievous. Good evening to you, Billy Painter, who has tweeted a picture of his boots being cleaned with quite clearly a little jibe in the direction of Lord Charles of Hungerford. So, Billy Painter, you may be a legend, but you're an absolute rascal. Thank you for highlighting that to us, Paul Merriman. That is an absolutely brilliant tweet. Steve Terrell, just to sort of finish off his last tweet, also saying we have strikers, just the tactics don't allow them to do what they need to do. All right, look, it's a really interesting point you're making there. So look, I mean, we kind of talked to Andrew a little bit about this, but Jason, if I could bring you back in at this point, because there have been question marks about how isolated our strikers have been this year, or so far this season, and no matter which way you cut it, no matter how good his movement is, Charlie's not going to be able to do all this all on his own, is he, Jason? So, whilst again, a couple of Steve's points have been sort of a bit tongue in cheek. I mean, I think that's absolutely, sort of laser focus correct. So it's only right that we should talk about it. Do you do you have any immediate concerns, Jason, that we simply don't have the support acts? Do you think that we need Charlie in a very, very busy January, or do you think that we actually have enough quality in the team and that Charlie can be a catalyst to sort of knit it all together?
It could go either way, to be honest. I think. I mean, there were times on Monday and various times during the season where you saw a lone striker on a halfway line with not a Swindon player within 20 metres of him. And if that's the way we continue to play, and that's Charlie Austin, we haven't got a hope. So, but that's not to say we don't have the players. It's like, when we, under Wellens, when we played, we had in Owen Doyle, we didn't have a quick striker. He wasn't a pacey player, but he had players playing tight off him. We could do that. We could do that now. But I do think actually the reality is probably we do need to freshen up the squad a little bit, and you probably need wide players, because I think that's beyond the actual strikers, the width at the top end of the pitch probably isn't what it should be. And even on the left from defence, it's like Lavennier's been doing brilliantly, filling in, but he's filling in. We're not getting any kind of crosses from the left, and we probably need to do something about that.
Well, Andrew Parmenter kind of agrees with you in many ways. Like Andrew's saying, and I quote, "Hello, Andrew. Good evening to you." Andrew tweets, Charlie needs to play with Wakeling up top. It won't work any other way. So it's an interesting one. I mean, I'll keep this with you, Jason, for the time being. What, in terms of a formation and getting the best out of Charlie and what you've seen from the squad so far this season, do you feel that we need to be playing in a lot of our successes this season, or our better results this year, have coincided with us coming away from 5 at the back, playing 4 at the back, and then maybe a diamond midfield or a 3 and a 3? How do you think it's got to work? Or how do you think, what formation do you feel the boys will need to have deployed in order to get the best out of Charlie?
I mean, without sounding like Scott Lindsay and saying formation doesn't matter, I think there is a thing about you can make any formation work for you. Personally, I think the one thing we haven't actually tried this season really is a kind of a 4-2-3-1 with two pivots, maybe Williams behind a striker, and then maybe one of the wide players tucking in a little bit. I think the 4-3-3 just results in isolation when we're struggling to get the ball. So maybe we just need to like look at the thirds and look at trying to get people in between those lines. I don't know. It's like I'm not a football coach. I just see it how I see it. I think at the moment 4-3-3 isn't working for us, but a back five certainly isn't. So we need something in between.
Well, listen, the joy of Twitter Spaces is such that we can always tell who's listening to the show and who's not. And I'm over the moon, and I'm not going to ask him to come on tonight for obvious reasons. It wouldn't be fair on the guy, but Charlie is listening in. Charlie, good evening to you, pal. Suffice to say, you have made an awful lot of people's years, buddy, and appreciate we've got a couple of away games between now and when we next meet at the county ground. But the 14th at the county ground is going to be some homecoming for you, pal. So appreciate you were at the county ground at the weekend, and it's fair to say, vast majority of the ground probably didn't necessarily realise that you were there. It's going to be a very, very different story against Grimsby. So on behalf of everyone that's listening in tonight, Charlie, for both your efforts past and indeed what we're all going to do together moving forward, thank you, bud. You're giving us the license to dream again. Darren Jackson. Darren, good evening to you. Darren said, if we could get Tomlinson in as well, he has a decent delivery from the left, which Austin would thrive on. And I think that just dovetails perfectly, Darren, with what Jason was just saying there about the left-hand side. I think that the left-hand side, last couple of games prior to the weekend, I think we talked about it on the show last week, the chemistry down the left with Johnny, Ellis and Marcel really offered us some really exciting opportunities. But for whatever reason at the weekend, it seemed to stall quite badly. We really didn't create much at all. But certainly, there's been an interesting tweet that's been put out by one of Peterborough's in the knows that mentions that Joe Tomlinson, as well as another couple of players, have been made available, or certainly that's the rumour from Peterborough. And could be on his way out. I believe Joe Tomlinson's contract's up in the summer. And you will, of course, all remember Joe Tomlinson, local boy, another guy that's got Swindon Town Football Club in his heart. And I don't think if the opportunity was there for him, he would turn down an opportunity to return to Swindon Town. Josh, STFC, has tweeted. Josh, good evening, mate. Josh says, Jephcott and Wakeling will develop so well. And I like that we're not just signing Charlie for the sake of it. We actually need a striker, and it gives more reason for crosses into the box if our other players know there is a prolific goal scorer there in waiting. So, yeah, for real, I think Josh is obviously making the point that we talked about earlier with Jephcott and Jacob Wakeling. There's no better player, particularly if you're, I would argue, if you're Jephcott, because it's a little bit like for like, very similar playing styles with Luke Jephcott and Charlie Austin. It'd be interesting to see whether the budget is there to retain Luke Jephcott and get that deal away. That's obviously been a topic of conversation over the socials, but certainly in the short term, with Jephcott apparently, according to the presser today, available to play at the weekend. Very, very exciting times if you're Luke Jephcott to be able to not only have the competition of having Charlie Austin breathing down your neck in terms of wanting to get your shirt, but also you needing to raise the bar to make sure you kind of try and keep Charlie out of the team, or indeed put a bit of pressure under Charlie if he's in the team. And we've already talked about a different dimension to Jake Wakeling's game by working alongside Charlie on the training ground. So thank you very much for that, Josh. We're having an absolute deluge of tweets tonight, so please bear with me as my computer system here tries to catch up. John Saunders wants to say, not saying that I'm a massive fan of Sandro Di Michele or indeed Scott Lindsay, but I guess they need a mention after weeks of pelters. Well, listen, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Charlie's through the door. we don't know what the machinations are of that deal. But given that Charlie Sandro plays a direct role in terms of recruitment at the county ground as technical director, and obviously Scott Lindsay is responsible. Ultimately, as told us before, he's got the ultimate power of veto on signings. Charlie's through the door, so I think it's only right, John, because it's an interesting point, isn't it? I think people have been very quick to turn on both Sandro and Scott over the course of the last couple of weeks. But the fact is, Charlie's going to be wearing the red of Swindon Town. So by hook or by crook, they have played a role in that. What else have we got here? So Pierce has tweeted. Pierce, good evening. Pierce W36 says, absolutely buzzing to have Charlie back. His presence alone will scare League Two defenders. Johnny Williams, Louis Reed, Charlie Austin, 3 class players for this standard. A few more signings needed and we will be right up there come the end of the season. Brackets, totally not getting carried away at all. A laughy face. Pierce, mate, join the club. I think you are absolutely on the money with that. Christian's also tweeted to say, I hope Charlie still comes back hungry to play the game. There were some off-field issues that were well documented last time. And the last thing we want to see is Charlie misbehaving in and around Swindon. Thanks, Christian. I think anyone else wants to read that tweet in its entirety can jump onto Twitter and read it for themselves. But you're never afraid to put your opinion across, pal. So please feel free to have that argument with people on your own Twitter feed. Richard, 1977, has posted a picture of Charlie on Sky Sports, resplendent in D squared cap, and it just simply says, he is back. He is indeed, Richard. We're very excited to say. Will has just tweeted to say, no words to sum up how happy I am with the return of Charlie Austin. Unbelievable stuff from the club. Just wonder what shirt number he's going to wear, as I think 32 is taken by Cal Meadow, who's out on loan. I mean, this is a really interesting point. Ellis, I'll put this to you, pal, because it's been a while since we've heard your voice. But I guess this is. I'm sure at the start of the season, I can't imagine what it's like being George Cal Meadow. You're wearing a shirt which, is it's got legendary status. The 32 at Swindon's a little bit like the 7 at Man United, isn't it?
It should have been retired.
I'd love to know what's going through George Cal Meadow's mind at the moment. In all seriousness, I'm sure George will be more than happy, subject to, I would imagine it's going to need EFL approval, but I'm sure that George is going to be more than happy to stand aside and let Charlie pick up the 32.
He has to.
But there is a small matter of a number 9 shirt as well, isn't there, available at the moment?
I thought Alloy had
looks like Cal Meadow's now the new number 9. What a shame.
No, sorry, not number 9. What was McCurdy's shirt? It was help me out here.
11.
There you go, the 11. I'm not sure 11 and Austin works for me. I'm sorry, George. No, I'm sorry, but 11 and Cal Meadow works quite nicely, doesn't it? He's a wide player. That kind of makes.
Yeah, we can make that work.
But again, I mean, it's an interesting one, Ellis, isn't it? Because it kind of plugs into some of the commercial realities now that the club will be dealing with. They're going to be selling an awful lot of 3s and 2s and A's and U's and S's and T's and I's and N's, aren't they?
Yeah, just a bit. Looking at it from the club perspective, you would sort of wish it was done before Christmas, because I'm sure they would have sold a few shirts for Christmas. But yeah, there's definitely going to be sort of an inflow and influx of Charlie Austin shirts being bought from the Swindon Town club shop. But yeah, I mean, just for old time's sake, he's got to have the number 32. He's got to.
What I mean, I'm guessing, Ellis, you're not one to like go storming out and buying a shirt with a name on the back, but there's going to be an awful lot of grown men, me included, that are going to be going and doing just that.
Yeah, get a full kit.
So Alex Vlogs, Alex, hello mate, good evening to you. Alex has also tweeted, truly unbelievable to have Charlie back. However, it does bring with it some pressure on Lindsay to get his team going. No excuses with players like Austin, Reed and Williams at his disposal in League Two. P.S. I'll be gutted if he's not number 32. Yeah, to the latter point, Alex, we've just sort of touched on. But Jason, I mean, I'll bring you back in on that point, because it really does, doesn't it, place a, you know, it. I mean, the whole Scott Lindsay sort of angle on this. It's a very, very interesting one, isn't it? Because if Charlie was to come in and not hit the ground running, then, you know, fingers are going to get kind of pointed at the gaffer, aren't they? It's like almost, you know, immediately. You can't escape that. You know, people. You know, we're not on a great run at the moment. This signing goes some way to kind of like alleviate that, give us all a little bit of hope. But it's a bit of an elephant in the room, isn't it? That, you know, in some ways, whilst it relieves pressure on Scott Lindsay, I think that pressure will go on super quick if it doesn't give us a relatively quick return. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I kind of feel he was a bit damned if Austin didn't sign and damned if he did. You know, I think there would be fingers pointed in every direction, you know. The pressure's going to be there. But then, to be honest, you know, he's got a fantastic player at his disposal now, something we really needed. So this could be the making of him, you know. It's like, this is what we've really lacked. We lacked a kind of a figurehead. So if he can't make it work, then I think it's going to be very hard for him.
Well, Michelle's tweeted just now. Michelle says, "Hello, Michelle. Good evening to you. Flower Girl 0404 says, Charlie brings excitement, passion, and a bit of shithousery, I'm sure. I can't bloody wait." I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that final point that Michelle raises there. And I don't know, I'll open this to the panel per se, because one of the sort of topics of conversation that came up after the weekend's game, particularly where I think you could kind of sort of call it a lazy kind of conclusion, but certainly around me in the town, then there was a lot of chat about the fact that actually this team are just too nice. And that actually it is missing a shithouse. Now we had a shithouse special a few weeks ago that Charlie very kindly joined in with, and sort of talked about the dark arts of the game, and that there are people that he's played with, and indeed there are things that he's learned over his career, and you know the need to have a little bit about the team. I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? So I don't know who wants to run with it, but
Please.
yeah, go on, Gabs, hit me.
Oh yeah, like they're far too nice. Like I think on Saturday I was lucky enough to be in hospitality, so I kind of had a good view of the pitch, and all you can hear is Lindsay, Mildenhall, and Gunning. There's no one on that pitch screaming, right, you get there, you get there. Nope, it's just all the management, which it's bizarre, really. Like I never really see that. Normally last season we had McCurdy shouting, we had Payne shouting, we had Conroy shouting, we had Boundary shouting. There was no one out there communicating at all. And not even the keeper. You know, the keeper has one of the best views on the pitch. Nothing from him all game.
Yeah, it's a question of leadership, Gabs, isn't it? It's not just about shithousery; it's about leadership, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because we tend to associate leadership with sort of centre backs or centre midfielders. We very, very rarely kind of talk about the talismanic presence of a big number 9 as being a leader or being a captain. But I mean, let's work on the basis Charlie's not going to be coming in and taking the armband off of anybody, as far as we're aware. If you were to regard, say, Angus MacDonald as certainly we've got a great goalkeeper in Sol Bryn. Angus MacDonald or indeed Clayton are kind of like our go-to centre backs when both are fit. Your central midfield, your central defensive midfielder, Louis Reed, has got that kind of talismanic presence about him. And then you move sort of up a touch and you've got sort of like a Johnny Williams type. He's a very different type of talisman, for want of a better word. Charlie's in many ways kind of like almost like the final piece of the jigsaw, isn't he, in that respect? Almost like completing the spine, if you will, because I'm sure that the likes of Jake Wakelin, and Luke Jeffcott aren't going to turn around and necessarily criticise us for kind of raising question marks about leadership, because they're still so young themselves, aren't they, Gabs?
Yeah, I'm also thinking in terms of the dressing room, I think Lindsay can almost kind of lean on Chaz a bit in terms of, right, when the tune's not quite there, from your perspective of playing in the Premier League, etc., where potentially could things improve?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. And I'll tell you what I think is going to be really crucial at that level of experience. Charlie's direct experience at Swindon Town Football Club traverses a really interesting period, which was the departure of Gordon Greer and then the taking on of the captain's mantle by John Douglas. And there have been people that have talked about that as a transitional period where we went from the 2010 kind of Wembley playoff final team, losing Gordon Greer from that final because of obviously his red card in the second leg against Charlton in the semi-finals. But then obviously losing Gordon like thereafter for the following season when Gordon went to Brighton. And everyone just assumed that John Douglas was going to be that kind of captain, but he was a very, very different type of personality and different type of leader in that dressing room. And it all fell away horribly, irrespective. I mean, we signed people like David Prutton, very experienced pros, but it just didn't happen. And Charlie himself took us through that transitional period when we did the sort of reflection on that season. Charlie told us his story of that season. So he's been in a dressing room where there has been leadership issues and it's fallen away. And I think that is going to serve him fantastically well. I mean, Christian mentioned some of the question marks around, some of the things that happened when Charlie was a younger lad. Rightly or wrongly bringing that up for debate. But the interesting part of it is that, you find me in early 20-somethings that, that hasn't made silly decisions in their life. And then
to be honest, Hannah's going out in Swindon nowadays, half the places have probably gone anyway.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the point I'm making, take a guy in his early 20s and then compare me and then show me that guy when he's in his early 30s, with a family in tow. You're talking about very, very different types of personalities. And, like I said, I'm not going to get too deep into that point, but you've got a chap there who I think he's going to bring leadership. He's going to bring experience to the piece. Chris Kelly's just DM'd us. Hello, Chris. Good evening to you. So Chris says, for me, goal scorer signing was essential. Not only does it give the fan base a boost, it will give League Two defenders someone that they are genuinely scared of. They aren't scared of our current strikers, kind of the point we're making in many ways, Chris. Charlie will bully them. Charlie will create space. Charlie will give Town a focal point. He will be amazing. If he banishes that Wembley miss v Millwall, even better.
Hannah's, here's one for you. I've just had a text from Robbie Waite.
Uh-huh.
The scene is set. It's Maybank holiday. Austin's through 1-on-1 to take us up to League One.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be listening. I'm sure he'll be smacking his lips at the idea of that. Hey, listen, I think the really interesting thing about unfinished business is that you talk about that as a motivator, and we kind of touched on this right at the start of the show. I'll tell you what's really, really interesting for me is that, that if there is a silver lining to what was quite clearly a really, really devastating sort of point in Charlie's very early career, okay, so I'll try and put this a slightly different way. I'm sure Charlie's not going to mind me saying this. He may well do, and he'll probably give me a boot for it. But every time I've raised it, talked about the Bob with Charlie, he always kind of goes, oh, here we go. There's always a little bit of a, oh, here we go. Now, but it's interesting because it clearly means something to him. And he clearly wants to, I genuinely believe he wants to kind of banish that. I believe he wants to address that. I think there's that. And I also think there is the nature of his departure. And Charlie, spoke about this openly in an interview. I think it was around the time he joined West Brom, where Charlie talked about the fact that he was just a kid at the time when he put in his transfer request at Swindon and the way that he left. But he looked back with his slightly older head on to my point about, the difference between early 20s Charlie and early 30s Charlie. But Charlie talked about the fact that, he was just a kid and so was his agent. He didn't really know what they were doing. He didn't really think about it. He kind of made a grown-up decision with a young man's sort of mind. And he felt that he threw a lot of the kind of sort of faith and adulation he'd been given by Swindon fans back in our faces. And he's here to put that right. And I think that's really, really exciting. So it's interesting that we talk about the bobble, and I think it's only right and proper that we do. It's a very. I don't think it's something that we need to leave on the sidelines as a topic of conversation, and I don't think we should shy away from it either, because I do think it's something that's putting a bit of fire in Charlie's belly. which I think is super exciting for us to consider. We've got. I've just been messaged again from My Sound Trauma. Hello, regular contributor. Thank you again for tweeting in. My Sound Trauma is saying, Charlie is 6'2". Another factor, given the short asses we have at the moment. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point. He's a big boy compared to some of the players that we've got back out there. My Sound Trauma also says we've surely got to have 12,000 at Grimsby. Yeah, well, we would certainly hope so. That's going to be quite a homecoming. And he's also asking the point, who's going out of the club in January? A bit of talk about Reedy being on his way. And who is Charlie Austin going to play with? Surely Lindsay plays a 4-4-2. Well, we kind of touched on that before. But here's an interesting one. What's going to happen to Harry Parsons? Now, listen, I think I'll address that head on, because I think Harry Parsons, as a goal scorer, is probably, if you look at all the strikers on the books at Swindon at the moment, he's probably, with the exception of Jeff Gott, probably the player who's most like Charlie in playing style. So again, I'm sure if I'm Harry Parsons, part of me will be thinking, well, how am I going to get a shout? But don't worry too much about that, because Harry's knocking him in for Chippenham, which isn't a bad standard to be scoring in when you consider it's only a couple of divisions away from where we are at the moment. But I'm sure Harry's going to be looking forward to the prospect of potentially playing alongside Charlie Austin. So, but it's certainly worth considering. James has tweeted, hello, James. Good evening to you, pal. Hope you're keeping well. James says, I liken the return of Charlie to the same as the return of Don Rogers. The excitement levels are very much the same. Now, wow. Okay, look, kind of, it's the point encapsulated, isn't it? And I mean, James, clearly a bit before my time, quite a bit before my time. But just to put this into perspective for all younger listeners, Don Rogers is having a statue commissioned. And if someone like James, with his sort of, supporting tenure, is turning around and comparing the excitement levels of Charlie returning to that of Don Rogers returning, that kind of gives you an idea what a seismic moment we are experiencing at the moment. So all I'm going to say, two things here. One, I'm going to say, bloody hell, you should be excited, because that's huge. Sir Don is arguably the greatest player in Swindon Town's history. And James is saying the excitement levels are right up there, of course. But the second thing is, don't allow fans of other clubs to deter you from milking this for absolutely everything it's worth. And don't allow other people to make you feel sick of hearing about Charlie Austin and this story. This is the kind of story that comes around once in a generation. Your club will not sign a legend every 5 minutes. And if you think of the way that the game has changed, particularly even though in the last 10 years, there are not many players that are going to have the impact at a club that Charlie has had, go on to have the career that Charlie's had, and still find it in their heart to come back and want to play for Swindon Town Football Club. So don't allow people to deter you from just how exciting this is. Dan Haswell, hello, Dan. Now, Dan, this is a little bit cheeky. Dan says, Brett Pittman, currently on 34 goals so far this season at the club that I work for. He's fit as ever, but has more to his game than running about. Charlie is the same. They read the game in ways other players simply can't. So, yeah, Dan, I believe, works at Porchester, where Brett Pittman is banging the goals in. And, yeah, 34 goals this season. He's clearly playing well below his level. If Charlie has anywhere near the goal return impact on Swindon Town that Brett Pittman's having at that level of non-league football, then, I think we can all take enormous heart from it. Jason Lane has tweeted, hello, Jason, good evening to you. Jason says, I understand football philosophies, but in League Two, you have to play through the thirds a lot quicker. Right. It kind of makes the point, really, doesn't it? We sort of touched on this earlier. I don't know who from my wonderful panel wants to pick up on this, but do you, in fact, Ellis, I'll punt this at you because we've not heard from you for a bit. Do you think that the current Swindon Town team is playing at a high enough tempo that we're going to be able to make the most of Charlie Austin?
Honest answer, no. But I do, however, think we have the capability of doing it, and we've seen glimpses of it in certain games. The frustrating thing is that I know, and probably most supporters know, that we can play good football. We can play quick football through the thirds, but especially I wasn't there Boxing Day, but from what I've heard, it wasn't great. But if you look at Barrow, we played good football then. Obviously Mansfield, I thought that was the change. That was when we were going to go on to start playing our football. I thought that's when it clicked, but it didn't. And the frustrating thing is, we can play like that. It's just when you've got the likes of Louis Reed, Ben Gladwin, he's been some of the passes he's made this season has been phenomenal. Obviously Johnny Williams, he's made some good assists. Hutton, the crosses he's putting in, we've got the delivery there. It's just whether we turn up on the day.
It's an interesting one, Ellis, and I'm with you in a lot of what you say. I think the thing that caught my eye in the first half against Barrow was the pace that we moved the ball around at, and the running that was involved, and the pace that the players were applying. Like, the tempo was very, very different, and there were real similarities in the Mansfield game as well for me. Appreciate we went behind, but they came straight out the blocks after conceding, and really went after Mansfield. And the thing is, we've got so many threats. We talked before about what Scott's building down the left-hand side. When that clicks, you cannot deny that there's going to be opportunities there. Ellis is a decent player at this standard. Johnny Williams has just come back from a World Cup. Marcel Lavinier cut his teeth at Spurs and has played European football. There's no doubting the pedigree of those two players, and indeed those three. Okay, so that's down your left-hand side. And then you've got Romeo Hutton on the right-hand side doing what Romeo Hutton does. Okay, you've got Ben Gladwin returning. I thought Ben Gladwin actually had a decent game at the weekend. So the interesting thing for me is going to just be about kind of like pace and tempo. But again, you slacken off on that pace and tempo with someone like Charlie out on the pitch. I genuinely believe that people are going to be putting a rocket up you. But Terry Ayres agrees
I'll
with
put a
you.
question to you all quick,
Yep.
actually, on the pace and tempo.
Yeah.
Do you think we're in the same situation as Welland's first season and last season, where we're better away from home because teams are more willing to bring the game to us? Therefore, we move the ball quicker and play at a tempo, as opposed to when we played teams at the county ground who were just going to put 11 men behind the ball and gamble, which effectively is kind of what Crawley did because they're down the bottom of the table struggling as well.
Yeah, I do, Gabs. I genuinely believe that's a massive issue. I mean, we talked about it before. I'm trying to remember which of the town players talked about it, but I think it might have been Frenchie actually. He talked about what's like a perceived sort of, pros come to the county ground, and it's like, for some of these guys, it's going to be, playing in front of 9,000-10,000 on a beautiful pitch at the county ground, 4 big stands, 3 of them full of fans. That's going to be almost like a kind of cup final for them. So they relish the opportunity to come to the county ground, to frustrate us. And it's no surprise to me that teams that have come out at us and had a go, I think if teams go toe to toe with us, I think we are suited to, to finding those opportunities. But, again, I can't envisage Charlie being a shrinking violet in an 11 that, are kind of like turgidly moving the ball around. Like, he's going to be getting into people. I think that's the leadership issue that we touched on earlier. But it is interesting. I was just about to say, Gabs, that Terry Ayres kind of agrees what sort of Ellis was just saying there. Terry's tweeted, "Hello, Terry." He says, "We're crying out for some creativity in midfield or out wide. We need way more than just Charlie." Well, I mean, Terry, a few names have popped up tonight, and there's been a mention of Joe Tomlinson. But here's an interesting one. I'm going to throw into the mix for you all to chew over, because there's been a lot of speculation over the last week or so about a return for Harry McCurdy. Now, obviously, McCurdy's put out an interview recently where you could interpret that as pretty much closing the door on it, but others have interpreted it as a come and get me plea. So could you envisage Harry McCurdy and Charlie Austin in the same team? Who wants to take that? Come on, you cowards. One of you wants to grab it.
I'll go on.
Plain and simply, no.
Do you know what? I don't think it will happen.
I just think with him, the chapter's closed. those sort of characters. I think before he left, he burnt a few bridges, and let's be honest, we don't know if it was just a one-off. It could have just been a purple patch, and he's had his purple patch, and we've cashed in. So
Do you know, I don't know about that.
I
always felt like he
not
had.
for me personally.
Not
I
for
always thought he had really good movement. I thought his movement was brilliant. You know, he used to come in off the right hand side, and he used to find those little pockets in the box. And I think in the past where he's been kind of treated as a winger, and we just give him a little bit of a free rein. But will he come back? I don't know.
Well, Dean McMackin's tweeted, Dean, good evening to you, pal. Dean said, be a great shout, the 4-2-3-1 formation for me. And certainly if we're playing a 4-2-3-1, you can imagine McCurdy, as you just pointed out there, Jason, slotting into that formation. Whether Charlie and Harry could work in a 4-4-2, I don't think so. I think if you played a 4-3-3, I can envisage it working with Charlie at the tip of the spear, and McCurdy and a Jake Wakeling playing off him. The trouble is, like, it's an interesting one, like the knock-on effect for Jake, this, isn't it? And again, I mean, Andrew, I don't know if you're still with us or whether you just politely left yourself on mute, but you are still with us. Tremendous, thank you, mate. Andrew, the game escapes me, but it was the first time I think it was one of Jeffcott's first or second starts, and you had Wakeling and Willow as the wide players and Jeffcott down the centre, and they just seemed like miles apart. It just did not seem to be working, and I think we'd all lazily assumed that Jake Wakeling could be the next Jerry Yates, and Jeffcott would be the new Owen Doyle, with Willow kind of dropping back into a kind of midfield supporting role. But do we? I mean, clearly, if we press ahead with Charlie as the main man and Jake playing alongside him, it's going to pose an interesting sort of tactical challenge for Scott Lindsay, and indeed a developmental challenge for Jacob Wakeling, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's generally considered, isn't it, from Plymouth, that Jeffcott ideally needs a partner of sorts, that he doesn't particularly sort of play through the centre on his own, or if he does, he's better off with some support and some help. I think in terms of movement, if you put Austin and Jeffcott together, I think I can imagine League Two centre halves running into each other and having cartoon birds tweeting around their heads and Austin running through and scoring. But I may be getting slightly carried away at that point. But I think it does sort of pose a question as to quite how you fit all of those in. Obviously, Jacob Wakeling's incredibly willing as a sort of wide player. Maybe for the time being, he's just going to have to adjust a bit and see if he can get a bit more Louis Barry into his game. I guess you think about the one goal he got. He's only really got recently against Tranmere, and that was sort of coming in to finish off a cross at the back post. So perhaps he's going to have to try and readjust his game a bit if you did have Austin, Jeffcott and Wakeling. I do actually think now I really consider it quite difficult to imagine all three of those starting. I'm not sure it would necessarily be the worst thing for Wakeling just to get a little spell out the firing line at the moment.
And Andrew, obviously, just bring you on to another point. So Joseph Seymour's tweeted, Joseph, good evening. Joseph makes the point. He said Grimsby will be Charlie's first game. And that, of course, Andrew, is right, isn't it? So even though Charlie's signed for the club, he's not going to be available immediately because he wasn't a free agent coming out of the last transfer window, which is, I believe, how the rules work. So we talked before about, obviously it's not that long ago. I think it's only a week or so ago that Charlie played his last competitive game for Brisbane Roar. But you would hope that it'd be sort of hitting a training ground almost immediately with a view to Grimsby, sort of, the home game on the 14th of January. 14th, I believe it's the 14th of January, being his first appearance. Would you be surprised if it was anything other than that, Andrew?
Well, I think in some ways it's quite handy. You've got a chance to really, hopefully, as long as everything does all go through and the club can announce it and rubber stamp it and all that. You've got a real nice spell where you can work with him, where you can integrate him, where you could take a look at his fitness and decide if you want to get, I'm not necessarily sure you need extra sessions. I'm not saying anything like that, but if you did want to do that, you can get it. You can get an understanding, and you can really figure out how to kind of integrate him and the other players and get an understanding of them. Yeah, but I'm 99% sure you're right on the rules that he can't sign until January the 1st. Because if he signed on January the 1st, it's too late for him to play on January the 1st. Therefore, by default, it all sort of rolls over to Grimsby. But I'm sure now he's back in the country and it's all about to be wrapped up. We assume that they will get him onto the training ground forthwith and start to figure out how to make the best use of them.
Well, SM1 Insider has just tweeted, and hello SM1 Insider, who says, a great start to the window, but let's make no mistake, we are weaker in several areas of the field versus last season. A couple of wingers and at least one midfielder would be top of my shopping list. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered that off, SM1, really. I think if you tap into the sort of topics of conversation that we've been having, I think we're all along similar lines to you. SM1 Insider goes on to say expects efforts will be made to offload a few of the brackets duds too. I note the Cairn to Plymouth rumour, which has surfaced tonight on the Town End forum. I mean, that's that would be a real shame. But I mean, there was a source attached to the club that was Les Caffrey, head of recruitment, a couple of weeks back, highlighted that one of the success stories in terms of the data-led recruitment that led the recruitment team to look at Saidu Khan had indeed attracted people's attention or clubs' attention, League One and above, based on his performances so far this season. And given Saidu Khan's relatively late arrival in the professional game, I don't think there would be anyone that would be surprised if there wasn't a certain kind of added momentum behind Saidu himself to want to play further up the league as quick as he can. I believe Saidu, 27 years old. So it's not a rumour that I've seen myself, SM1, but just down the road, Plymouth flying in the leagues above us. So yeah, I mean, why? Again, if the money's right, I'm sure that every single player in the Swindon Town squad is for sale at the right price. So my inbox is going absolutely doolally this evening. Lee's been in touch. Hello, Lee. Lee Fur 3 says, for what it's worth, I think Romeo Hutton could be a key ingredient. His crossing and balls into the box this season have been quality. Charlie will thrive on that kind of service. I mean, Lee, listen, I'll make you right. Very, very hard to disagree. And I mean, I don't mean to keep on sounding like a parrot and repeating myself, but what we've been doing down the left-hand side, Ellis, Willow, Marcel, I think is really, really exciting. I think on the right-hand side, it's equally as exciting with Romeo Hutton's delivery. And I can't help but think, as we said before, Charlie's movement, Charlie's kind of like demanding nature, I mean, for me, I whilst I don't believe that Charlie is the answer, alone, I do believe that Charlie is going to make certain demands of the existing squad. This is interesting. London Crooner's been in touch. So hello, London Crooner. Whilst we're talking about old legends returning, is this time for us to hijack a Matt Ritchie move to Portsmouth? So again, I've not been paying attention to Matt Ritchie moving to Portsmouth, but I guess Matt Ritchie to Portsmouth is a little bit like Charlie back to Swindon. Portsmouth to Matt Ritchie is a very, very dear thing. Matt Ritchie, I believe, cut him open and he bleeds blue. So I don't think anyone's going to necessarily criticise Matt Ritchie for wanting to make a move back from Newcastle to his home in Portsmouth in much the same style that Charlie is making his move back to Swindon Town. James Spencer's tweeted, hello, James. James has said McCurdy won't come back. Scott doesn't want him. He was disruptive before he left. So there's James putting the kibosh on any notion of a Harry McCurdy return. Swindon Goon has been in touch. Rob, who says we should try to bring Matt Smith back. Now there's a great shout. Should try to bring Matt Smith back on loan until the end of the season. he was too good to be playing in our under-21s. Of course, being Swindon Gooner, he got a foot in both camps. He was great under Wellens at the county ground. I mean, Gabs, that's one for you, mate, because I know you're a fan of Matt Smith. The idea of Matt Smith in this Swindon Town lineup, playing balls down the channels for Charlie to get on the end of, that's lip smacking, isn't it, bud?
Oh, mate. I'm nearly speechless, genuinely.
No, I thought Matt Smith was getting games, though. I thought he was a Doncaster or something like that. And he was
what Matt Smith are we on about? Are we on about the one who was at Millwall?
No, we're talking Matt Smith. We're talking about the midfielder.
Oh, the midfielder Matt Smith.
The Arsenal loanee Matt Smith.
You know what? He's had a bit of a fall from grace, hasn't he? Like, last time I checked, he's at Charlton. We didn't like him there. Actually, let me check that now. I'm gonna check that.
Not a bad shout. While you're doing that, Gabs, I will. Josh has tweeted to say, leaving out Rashawn Hepburn Murphy when he's fully fit, when he's fully ready, he looks amazing. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point, Josh. I'll tell you what. I turned to the chaps that I stand next to in the town end at the weekend, and I just said, like, yeah, there's Rashawn Hepburn Murphy is one of those players that he is explosive, he is direct, he is a defender's nightmare. The idea of Jake Wakelin, Rashawn Hepburn Murphy, and Charlie Austin in a front three, oh my good lord. So thank you, Josh, for raising that. Sorry, Gabs, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but that is some front three.
No problem. Well, as you know, Matt Smith was the former Doctor and in House of the Dragon. But anyway, Arsenal Matt Smith was on loan at Doncaster. I can't see anything. Is he still on loan there? Just says Doncaster. So yeah, let's assume he's at Doncaster.
Yeah, because I know, like I said, I know he's gone somewhere, and he at one point he was getting games. But so Emily Rose has tweeted to say, I feel like I've been living under a rock all day. No, Emily Rose, Doctor Who Geek, I can tell you, Emily, categorically, Charlie Austin is back at the county ground, Emily. Drink it in. It is not a dream. You are going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's your reality. So live it. And like I said, I'm just going to repeat the point. Look, I'm going to go on and on about this. Like, don't allow anybody to put you off enjoying this moment. Like, you are not going to get many moments in your Swindon Town supporting life. And trust me, I've had 35 years of it. You're not going to get many moments like this. So literally milk it for all its blinking worth. Jamie Smith, which is really, really lovely. I tweeted earlier today, rather mischievously, a picture of a Charlie Austin coffee mug being topped up with coffee. And Jamie Smith said, would be such a signing. Jamie, you clearly didn't get the memo that Sky Sports put up on the telly approximately 2 hours before you tweeted in reply. Because as I said, it's your reality, pal. So make the most of it. And I think we're just mopping up the last of the tweets as they're rolling in now. There's a few kind of like repeating the point. But this lovely tweet from Mark Thompson. And Mark, it's been brilliant going on a journey with you over the course of the last couple of days. And Mark tweeted approximately 4 hours ago saying, now is not the time, Hannahs, for unfounded rumours. I still haven't got over the fact that Charlie left the first time, nor Coxey, nor Miggs. Well, neither Coxey nor Miggs in their career, Mark, made it back to the county ground. And Sir Charles of Hungerford certainly has. So I know you'll be listening to this at some point, mate. And you're of a similar generation to me. I hope you enjoy every single second of it, as I believe most of the Swindon Town fans are. And Joe Bennett has just sent us a direct message. Joe says, I love the signing, but can we caveat the signing with the next problem? The team's big issue this season has been creating chances. Who's going to create the chances for Austin? We need a winger. We need two wingers. Joe, listen, mate, we talked about it a lot on the show, so we're not going to go over old ground. But I think we've already thrown up a few names of players who may well be available to us in the current window, or we may be after. And there are people that are speculating on the nature of there are people that are flagging that they're in the know in relation to some of those transfers. This is interesting. Now, Steve Terrell, you've got some front, pal. So Steve Terrell says, still don't think Swindon fans will be happy till we re-sign the 1969 full squad, 1990 full squad, and the 1993 full squad. Oh, and Lucas Majera. Listen, Steve, I know your tongue is in your cheek when you said that, pal. And I know that you're loving it as much as the next man. So don't try that one, buddy. I'm not buying that for a second. So Glenn Richards is asking, come on, guys, you have to sing it out on the show. Well, okay. I've already sung once tonight, Glenn. I don't know whether I could do it again. I think it's probably just best that we leave that for the Grimsby game, mate. But, of course, what Glenn's talking about is the nice one, Charlie, nice one, son, nice one, Charlie, let's have another one. I'm sure we're going to see that. A little bit old school, belted out of the town end. I think probably no better way, unless anyone else wants to add on to what I'm about to say, but Brad gives us a tweet, which is possibly the best way for us to finish our Charlie Austin special tonight, which is, this is going to be special. Love heart eyeballs times 3. Let's Charlie's home. This gives us the boost that we needed. I think Brad makes the point really, really, really well. And I mean, Andrew, listen, I'll come back to you as somebody that obviously has the lofty perch and gets to overlook, obviously, all the stands, all the action on the pitch. This really does give us a boost at a crucial point in the season, Andrew, doesn't it? Charlie's signing.
Yeah. I think there is there's the financial element of football, and there is the emotional component, and you can't ignore the emotional component, because if we didn't have it, none of us would turn up. So we should enjoy that, and we should revel in that. And I see no reason why he shouldn't be able to be very satisfactory on the emotional front and the footballing front, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that will make sense. Well, listen, I'll put this to my panel because I know that we've done a bit of work. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking we've been going at this now for like an hour and 40 minutes. I don't really want to dampen what we talked about by going over the old ground of Warsaw. I don't think there's anything to be gained from that. Northampton, though, tomorrow. For those of you that aren't aware, that are listening in, the Northampton game, if you're not able to make the journey, appreciate a lot of us are still off on the festive festive break. I believe we're taking an enormous following up Northampton. I think there's about 1,300 of us, which is a hell of an effort, making their way to Sixfields tomorrow. So congrats to everyone that's going to be going up there. For those of you that aren't able to travel, the game is available on iFollow, and you can buy yourself a match pass for 10 of your great British pounds. So you will be able to stream the game tomorrow. I don't know who wants to provide us with any kind of input in relation to Northampton. I mean, it goes without saying they're one of the top 3 that are absolutely streaking away with things at the moment. It's a must-win in many respects. I mean, just to give you a flavour, Northampton currently they drew their last match, but they've won, drawn, 1-1. Drawn is their form in reverse order, sitting 3rd in the league. They've played 22, won 12, drawn 7, lost 3. 37 goals for, 22 against. As I say, 43 points versus Town, who are 8 points behind, but have played a game more. Our form is looking pretty grim in comparison, where our last 6 reads lost 1, drew, lost, drew. Northampton, of course, assistant coach, Swindon Town legend, captain that took us all the way to the Premier League, but didn't make an appearance for us there, Colin Calderwood, but they are going great guns. Who wants to give us a little bit of a taster as to what's in store for us at Sixfields tomorrow, guys?
Could be a long night.
Yeah, it's not a fixture, Austin signing or no Austin signing, Gabs. It's not a fixture that I'm kind of smacking my lips for. I did say before Saturday, I don't think there's any team in this league that we should be kind of going into with a fair wind, kind of fearing, and that was obviously off the back of beating Barrow, giving Leyton Orient a good game. I know Steve did a number on us, but I don't think we should be entering any fixture in this league fearing
it. It would be so Swindon to get a result as well.
It would.
It would be so Swindon get a result tomorrow and then go and lose to Colchester.
Mm.
I'm calling it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
He's so Swindon as well.
You're not,
Colchester don't even know how to score. Like, I'll just. Yeah.
all right then, Gabs. Listen, how do you think wholesale changes off the back of the weekend, or do you think Scott? I mean, Scott made the point. He said he's not making it in his post-match presser, as I'm sure Andrew will attest to. He was quite keen to point out, I'm not making excuses, but they are carrying a lot of injuries. There was a bug that went around the side over the festive period, so they weren't in fantastic shape. Do you think he kind of goes with what he knows, and he gives the team from Saturday another opportunity to redeem itself, or do you think they make some wholesale changes and we see the likes of Kieran Brennan being introduced back into the starting lineup? You've had Morgan Roberts is a potential interesting starter going up against his old club. Should he throw some players in that have got points to prove? What would you do, Gabs?
I think he's got to look at the way Saturday went and look at how we got on against their big centre backs, centre halves, because John Guthrie, 6'5", and then is it Fraser Horsfall plays alongside now from Stockport?
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'3" or something like that as well. So I think Northampton, from what I saw in the home game anyway, because they didn't particularly play very well, but did a number on us similar to Warsaw. I think they're going to play a similar style to Warsaw, but be more on the front foot because they're at home. But on the other hand, it's a game they don't really need to win because of that gap currently.
Yeah, it's true enough. Obviously, we've played a game more than them, but and they'll have a couple of points to prove. I mean, appreciate they were away from home, but they got a half decent point against Mansfield away from home. Conceded late. Mansfield scored in the 84th minute, and Will Hoskins, who we talked about earlier tonight, 4 minutes later, snatched an equaliser for them. From what I understand, it wasn't exactly a stellar performance. So yeah, they'll have their own points to prove. There'll be the interesting thing will be Northampton do create a lot of chances. Northampton do get a lot of shots off. They're not necessarily big possession based teams. So if we can keep hold of the ball, play with a certain tempo, I think we've got to go at them, Gabs, haven't we? I mean, under the current levels of pressure that the gaffer's feeling, we can't hold anything back in this game, can we? And that's a real double-edged sword, because clearly you don't want to leave the back door too wide open either, do you?
Mm. Yeah, for me, tomorrow's a free hit. Colchester's the game where we need to be getting a result.
So
yeah, I think any of those top three now, Stevenage, Orient, Northampton, is a free hit. So essentially,
are you of the opinion, Gabs, that 3-4 points from the next two, you'll be happy with that?
Yeah, I was bite your hand off for 3 or 4. Yeah.
So you take a point ahead of kickoff, and away you go. Yeah, okay. What's your take, Andrew, going into tomorrow's game? I mean, obviously you've been in the club today. You've got the vibe. You've looked Scott Lindsay in the eye. What do you think he'll be thinking? What do you think he'll be happy with coming off the back of tomorrow's game?
I think he definitely wants to see a better performance. It sounds like it's a bit too soon for Brennan, who's apparently had the worst of the general sickness bug that's going around. But Jeff Scott's meant to be back. I think Gab's kind of summed it up quite well in that. I feel it's a bit like facing Walsall Plus, if you know what I mean. They've got the sort of strength of Walsall, and they've got a bit of extra quality compared to them to go about it. So I do think it's pretty difficult. But I would say his sort of press conference note was politely defiant today. I think. Well, he was fairly critical of that Walsall performance overall. He's not kind of budging from the basis and the style he wants to play. So he sort of made it pretty clear we're going to be sticking with that and seeing that. So he kind of doubled down a bit on them still ultimately being in a decent position and playing the right way. So you can all have your own opinions on that. And as I said sort of at the start, you do present the stats, and the stats say that which team takes the most shots per game? Believe it or not, it's Swindon, despite the relative lack of goals. So as long as you keep doing that and you keep getting in around penalty box, the sort of the argument from his perspective is that this sort of lack of goals will correct itself, and it will happen. But I'd also take 4 points in the next two games. Draw, I think, pretty acceptable and decent performance tomorrow, and then hopefully go and see Colchester off, who are right down the bottom. But yeah, he was sort of stubbornly upbeat. Is that fair? I think that's fair.
All right. So, I mean, Gabs is saying he's happy for a defeat, but I'm not necessarily saying that is Gabs's prediction. Andrew, would you care to provide us with a prediction tomorrow?
Ooh, you can paint me with a yellow streak and see the feathers on me at this point. But like I say, I'd take a point. I think if we get a point, we've done pretty well, because there clearly is, looking at their records, a gap between the effectiveness of the top three sides. Stevenage are I think the most direct. Northampton are a bit in between because they can play, and then Orient the most stylish. So let's be optimistic. Let's say we're gonna double down. We're gonna have 1,200 people there who are going to be perked up by the first likely arrival of the January transfer window, and they will sneak us on some kind of decent draw somewhere.
That will do me nicely. How about you, Ellis? What are you saying, buddy? What's your prediction?
Do you know what? I reckon we're going to get a win tomorrow. I put in our chat before the Walsall game, I was feeling really positive. I genuinely thought we were going to get sort of a 4-0 win, and I'm feeling the opposite about tomorrow's game, which can only mean that we're going to absolutely thrash Northampton.
Hey, Hannah's. That reminds me, actually, Ellis. What would I say to you lads after Barrow? Every time I come on here and I say not confident, we go and win.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first.
There we go.
Don't steal my thunder, Gab. So, Ellis, you're saying that we're going to get a win. Do you want to give us a scoreline?
I think we're going to win 3-0.
A 3-0, fair dues to you, mate. I tell you what, 3-0 away win at Northampton really would be quite something. Hey, listen, we've got goals in this side, as we proved at Mansfield. It's just a question of just rediscovering whatever touch paper they had that day.
Yeah.
What about you, Jason? Where's your head at, buddy?
I mean, I think the form says that we should lose this one. And based on the fact that they're very good at set pieces and we are not so much, my head says it's a loss. But I have a sneaky feeling that we don't play to the playbook this year, do we? We win one game, we lose another, we draw, a couple in a row. I kind of feel like we'll probably get something out of this game. I do wonder whether actually Hepburn Murphy might get a start, because he feels like he's getting a little bit closer, and maybe this is the opportunity, and who knows? But
I still think it would be a very brave move, Jason, for Scott to throw Rashawn Hepburn Murphy in from the start tomorrow. And if he was,
I think it would be.
If he was to pick,
maybe he should. Maybe he should be brave.
I'm not saying he shouldn't. I think it would be a very, very gutsy move. Listen, if I was in the position that he was in, I'll be taking a few gambles now. What's he got to lose? You've just got to. I think you've got to consider the welfare of the player. Rashawn took some big hits from their centre backs at the weekend. He's on the receiving end of some rough treatment, and he got up and soldiered on. I thought Rashawn was one of the real bright spots of the weekend. There were very, very few, but his performance off the bench I thought was really exciting. So go on then, Jason. Give us a scoreline.
I'm going to say 1-1.
A 1-1 draw. Okay, which leads me with just my prediction to go with. Well, just in the, I don't know. There is something about our bonkers little football club. I never know whether I'm coming or going with them. And I think tomorrow is going to be much the same. I do think the signing of Charlie is going to cause a bit of a stir. I do think it will kick a few people up the jacksie. I do think it's going to be generally positive. Will create a nice buzz. And I do think roared on by 1,300 Wiltshire men and women. I can see us just doing something utterly against the form book, and we're going to win 2-0. And I'm not going to give you scorers, but I think the goal is going to come from the forward areas. Thanks again to my sound trauma, who's just sent us a note, Gabs. You'll be pleased to know that Matt Smith is apparently back at Arsenal and he's playing in the under-23s. So who knows? He made a big enough impression, didn't he, when he was at the county ground, that if we're looking for creativity from midfield, Matt Smith would certainly be someone you would expect would be on our radar. Well, look, I mean, what a show. It's just mind-boggling how exciting the re-signing of Charlie Austin is to Swindon Town Football Club. And I know there are sections of the fan base that have raised eyebrows and provided a counter view, and much of it tonight has been unbelievably positive, as you would expect the re-signing of a club legend to be. As I said, it was brilliant that Charlie's jumped on to have a little listen tonight, and I'm sure that he soaked up all of our good wishes. And all being well, he'll be in the ground tomorrow, and he'll be able to sort of receive the adulation of the 1,300 odd that are travelling, because I'm sure they won't be short of voice celebrating the return of CA32, as we hope he will be confirmed as shortly. I'm guessing subject to EFL approval on the shirt number. But listen, all that leaves me to say is just thank you to my guests, Ellis Holloway, Andrew Hawes, Gabs Bononi, and Jason Cockerton. It's been an absolute treat. Myself, Hannah's, thank you ever so much for joining us again, guys. As you know, the Tom Broadbent Lounge is an unofficial Swindon Town fan Twitter space. As such, views from the show do not reflect those of Swindon Town Football Club, or indeed Sir Tom Broadbent himself. Really look forward to following up again in the next couple of days. Post Northampton, we'll have another show scheduled. We're still in silly season, subject to everyone's availability. We hope to be back online, certainly with you within the next week or so. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. If you're listening to the recorded version, we're always open to your feedback, constructive or otherwise. Don't feel you just got to give us all your platitudes. It's always lovely to hear some constructive criticism from you. And yeah, as I say, our thanks to Charlie Austin for making a few dreams come true. We very much look forward to catching up with you all again very, very soon. But for now, we are the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, and we'll catch up with you very, very soon. Come on, you Reds.
Chaz, 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 Chaz. You're making